it's going to go red, and I'll just say it's acceptable.
I agree. Right. Thanks for watching. Next week, what are we doing?
There we are. Completely done. Yeah. Well, here we are. It's just me and him.
I hope you didn't miss the discussion.
No.
If you tuned in, you're too late. It's all over.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a fantastic. I really enjoyed that one.
Fantastic. And the special guests were amazing.
2 hours. That was really quite extraordinary, wasn't it? Quite extraordinary. Yeah, Rupert will be along in a minute, and Mark. Bruce convinced him to change some settings in his camera, and now he's gone. So it was well
maybe
done.
Never to return.
That got rid of him. Yeah.
Hey Gary, would you like to make some changes to your camera?
Yeah, I see. I can. Afternoon, Dan. I see. I can actually choose to have people to run this now instead of me, which maybe I should do that for yourself. I was just before, as we were starting, I was talking to Bruce that the FAA have said it's okay. The Z-axis thing will be just tickety-boo for remote ID. And when they're talking about the Z-axis, they're talking about the Z-axis for the ground control station, not the aircraft itself, almost forcing aircraft-style manufacturing or not manufacturing, what's the word, standards onto your smartphone or GCS. So they've rushed through a little bit of an amendment, and it's still all nonsense. And that happened yesterday. 22nd it happened was yesterday. Yeah, that happened yesterday.
So what about for the craft? That's still GPS is acceptable for that as well?
Yeah, funny enough, the specification for the craft isn't quite as tight as it is for the bit that they actually want to track, which is the operator.
I think they wanted to make sure people weren't standing on boxes while flying because it'd be dangerous.
Absolutely.
And they need that resolution to determine that from a distance.
Accurate to 15. Oh, hello. He's still in the shed. Let's pull him back in. And
no, he's still
flickering.
Change it.
Yeah.
Amateurs.
It didn't help, I'm afraid. I don't know why, but my camera's rubbish.
Well, maybe it's because you've got 60 hertz wicks and those kerosene lamps you're using. Get 50 hertz wicks for them.
Well, they are LED, so maybe they're the problem. I don't know.
Yeah, you need to get a filtered power supply for them, a DC supply, not just a chopped up AC one.
Oh, it's all the technicalities. We're waiting on Rupert to join us. Rupert has gone jolly. Oh, that's better.
Yeah,
it is actually.
The Blair Witch Project strikes again.
Rupert's gone very fast with his FPV aircraft, and he's having his supper. So hopefully he'll be finished his supper shortly. Otherwise, till he comes along, what else have we seen this week that has caught our eye?
Did I see that Boeing and others are now going to put pilots in these air taxis?
All of them are. They have to. They have to for the first few years. It's not a non-starter.
So technology, yet again, is ahead of the curve, but because of the lack of understanding on the technology, shall we say, and because regulations are stuck where they are, it yet again is holding back a technology, would you say? No. Or is it fair point?
No, I think it's that the public wouldn't use them. But if you're going to jump in something that's going to hoist you way up into the sky, who do you trust most? The guy with the white shirt and the epaulets, or the guy with the pizza stains on his T-shirt that wrote the software?
Well, this is kind of the thing, isn't it? Because there are places where they want them, and don't get me wrong, it's going to be great. Some people will want to go and do that job, but the next question becomes: so these aircraft now have basically lost the ability to carry 4 people. They're now down to 3, or they've got to make them slightly bigger, slightly more powerful, slightly bigger batteries to cope with that weight, that extra weight, because all of a sudden you've got to allow for 100 kilos a person, maybe a bit more. So there's an impact straight away on the aircraft's efficiency, if you like. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be quite an interesting impact on this, if you get where I'm coming from. Maybe not.
Well, I'm just sending you a different link to Rupert. It seems to have changed somewhere along the way to be different to what I sent earlier. So let's just
I think air taxis, and of course air taxis, you're going to have to make it so the pilot is then secure. So they're going to have to now make it so that the pilot is in a little cabin, because manned aviation, if you get on a plane, the pilot is locked away because you don't want anyone interfering with the pilot. So they're now going to have to make these cockpits where the pilot sits. There's four people behind.
Doesn't count less than 18 passengers. So
drones are always considered the worst thing, and they're the things that are going to be a security risk or a safety risk. I can see these air taxis, sadly, that they're going to prove to be very unsafe. I don't
know if they'll prove to be unsafe. I don't think they'll prove to be much cheaper than a helicopter, like a 505 or something like that.
Yeah, and the recharge turnaround time is going to be a killer, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the big thing, I think, because all of a sudden you've got to put that extra big battery in now for that fifth person you're carrying. I think the recharge times will be horrendous.
We already discussed that even in an ordinary aircraft, you've got to get the maximum number of hours out of it in a day to pay for it. And these are not going to be any different. And if you've got to spend 50% of your time or longer actually sitting there unable to fly because you're recharging, that really shoots to hell all the economics of it. Even though you're saving on fuel and so forth, you've still got a pilot there. Those airplanes are expensive. You've still got the capital cost. You've still got all the insurance, the running costs, the landing fees. I don't know that it's going to be economically viable because maybe only millionaires will use them. But hey, they can use a nice plushly nice plushly set up helicopter as well. They've probably got their own.
Yeah, it's all battery packs, and but you'll be swapping, won't it? What about on hull insurance and things like that? Yeah, just the actual danger of having those battery packs if you're going to swap them around, lying around. I must admit, I've got for a while, I've got more lithium hanging around than I've had. And I don't like it. I don't like having it in the house.
And what happens if you have a storm front blow in for a week and your batteries are sitting there fully charged and you go to get in your aerial mobility thing and you can't because the battery inside it's all puffed to bits and there's no room for you?
Well, as long as you press the little thing so that you see the 3 bars come across and all that, you've got to keep doing that. Perhaps actually you'll employ someone else to do that, just to press the little knob just to see if the bars come across. Yeah, no, it does. I guess what could you do with those batteries to sort of, you could run cycles just running the computers to tell you that the weather forecast is horrible. Or you could use them to power other things in the interim and to keep them busy.
What will be interesting to see then is what kind of pilot certification that the regulators are going to have to come up with, because these air taxis, they are basically kind of here, if not they're very shortly about to arrive. Will it be a helicopter permission you'll need? What certification? Because helicopters
it'd be more like a balloon pilot, wouldn't it? Because you're just floating around there, you're disturbing it by moving it. Oh look, here's Rupert.
Yeah. Hero of the hour. Rupert, we're not worthy. We're not worthy.
Took him a long time to get here. He's very slow.
Yeah, that's right. He's known. Old Slow Rupert, they call him, don't they? Slow Roops. Well, congratulations. What can we say? Jolly fast. Tell us, Rupert, how fast was it and how did you do it? Oh, you're muted.
He's not muted. He's just not. There's no audio. Maybe he's traveling faster than the speed of sound. We'll get the sound later.
The sound will come, a few minutes' time. Well, while Rupert sorts his sound out, perhaps...
Do you know sign language? Can you mime it?
Yeah, 500 and... Oh, you know the speeds, don't you, Bruce? Maybe you can talk it through.
509 kilometers an hour, 316 miles an hour, perhaps. You can just lip sync to this, Rupert. It'll be fine. Click on the cam mic icon and see what microphone is selected. Have you got a microphone selected? Maybe not.
No.
Maybe this program is just not fast enough for Rupert.
Here
comes the IT expert has arrived.
He's got his own IT department.
Yeah, he has. It's amazing.
And that's the sort of thing when you can go really, really quickly.
Yeah, like Rolls-Royce wouldn't have an IT person waiting there like that.
No.
I'm enjoying this stream. It's better than our usual ones.
It is.
Only problem is working in the shed. I get gnats that get in.
Gnats?
Is that a political party?
I didn't know, yes, it is here. I didn't think there were any of them still flying.
Well, it's still warm here in the UK. We're still, it's still what, 14 in the day or so.
It's not warm. It's not warm.
No.
It's winter here.
That is warm. 14 is t-shirt weather.
Wow.
Do you have wool-lined t-shirts and fleece-lined t-shirts or something? That's terrible. I couldn't survive in them. No. What was it? It was 23, 24 here at the moment, or today sometime.
Yeah, it's...
At Rupert's place, it's always warm because he's put 9 kilowatts into a little electric motor. It always gets warm there. No, he's thrown his hands up.
Even the IT have gone. We don't know what's going on.
Try, minus 12, Dan. Well, that's. Oh, I was going to say, why don't you try a cell phone, Rupert? But there we are. All right. So yeah, he went jolly fast, flying FPV with just analog system as well.
I think you probably needed that for the latency. If you're traveling at 509 kilometers an hour, I don't think you really want to be that far behind the ball, do you?
Well, that was going to be a question of mine, if he stuck around. But he quite correctly decided to leave, which is, that's fair, par for the course. If a digital system really would have been that terrible for him, because I wonder, even with
the HD0, the Fat Shark one, would have had low enough latency, but I don't know that it would have had sufficiently good range and signal integrity because the RF side of those things isn't as good as the DJI. And when the Fat Shark system it goes in a big way, and all you get is this lovely mosaic quilt of speckled blocks on the screen. You can't see through the noise because if you look at Rupert's video, you can see it gets pretty noisy at places, but you can still see through that snow. But when the Fat Shark digital system goes, you got nothing. You just got a patchwork quilt of little coloured blocks, and that's not what you want at 509 kilometres an hour.
Do we know what aircraft he was flying?
Yes, we do, but we're not telling you.
No. I've just said
if you look at his video
as well.
Put a link to his video. Have you got a link to his video, Gary? Stick that in the thing so people can then find something better to watch than us. But he's got a bit of backstory and the model itself, and some, because some of the early attempts were quite interesting when he was blowing up motors and bending shafts and exploding props.
Wow. I mean, that is 316 miles an hour, roughly. So 509 kilometers.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty exactly.
That's
it's only just over 100 kilometers an hour slower than the Rolls-Royce Spirit of Innovation, which claims to be the fastest electric plane in the world. And if you look at the price differential, I think Roops is winning on a kilometers per dollar basis.
Yeah, if you start, yes, if you make that the rubric, yeah, absolutely. And as you said, 7 kilowatts, wasn't it?
I think it was 9 kilowatts.
9 kilowatts. 9 kilowatts of power. Oh my God.
That's a lot. And horsepower, what's that, about 14 horsepower, 13 horsepower?
I don't know. I wouldn't have a clue how to work that out. What I know is that I've been flying some quads a measured 80 kilometers an hour for a deliberate reason, and they go pretty quickly across my horizon. Hang on, here he comes again.
So, 60.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yay, we have.
No,
oh,
can't hear you. Yeah, can't hear you. Welcome.
Technology. Hello, guys.
Technology.
Hello.
Well, again, congratulations.
Yeah,
g'day. We're saying 9 kilowatts. We're saying 500 and a bit kilometers an hour, and we're saying you couldn't afford a DJI FPV, digital FPV system. That's why you must have kept it old school. Is that right?
Yeah, you're in the ballpark there. I think. This flight was probably just a bit under 9 kilowatts. I've had different motors and props and one thing and another, and we're about 8.89 something. I don't know in the air. I'm kind of guessing at it. But yeah, it went well. I'm very pleased. I had a failure the first time, as you can see in the video. Very annoying mistake. Not a mistake really, but I just overcooked it. It was too many RPM for the prop and not a strong enough prop for it. And it came off and cost quite a lot of money actually, because it took the motor, the ESC, and the battery out. So I had to remake all of that. And APD, who are the ESC supplier, replaced it for free, the ESC. So I have
good for them.
big them up for the ESC can take 17 kilowatts. And it's 35 grams, so, and it's a tiny little circuit board. So I've yet to put 17 kilowatts through it, but obviously you know what I'm thinking.
But are you playing in the realm where it'll get impossible to get motors and propellers that can cope with all of this?
I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? I know that the German guys with the F3S planes are going quite a bit faster. They're going sort of 545 kilometers an hour, 560. I don't know what the unofficial speed is, but they're going through gates officially at over well over 500. So, but they're using 3-bladed props, so you can get. Obviously, the main problem you come up against is the tip speed of the prop. So you can only rev it so fast before the tip starts going through the sound barrier, and then the efficiency just drops right off. You use, the power demand goes up hugely, and the output doesn't. So previously, I've really just upped the RPM, just kept upping the RPM until I found the limit. And now I'm kind of starting to learn that you've really got to keep the prop speed down as low as possible with as much pitch on it as possible. And in order to get more thrust, to use more blades, basically. So I think really to make it faster, I would actually have to drop the RPM and put more blades on it.
And the airframe, what airframe were you using?
So I've used this one for probably 2 or 3 years now, and started at 220 miles an hour with it on 6S, and then sort of worked my way up, got to 265 on 6S, and really couldn't get any further than that because the amp demand is then sort of over 300. So the infrastructure in the plane and the connectors, it was desoldering connectors and all sorts of things. So it got too much, really. So obviously, the higher voltage you can use, the less amps you're using, and you get the same sort of total wattage. So, and the way I looked at it was what ESC will take the most voltage, and then give it the most volts. So I've got the most sort of potential to make power without using too many amps, and then just try to match it with a motor that would rev it. And that's the problem, really. In-runner motors tend to be higher kV, so it's quite hard to find an in-runner motor that will rev low enough at 55 volts that your prop tip isn't supersonic. So it's actually worked out really well. This setup's worked surprisingly well. I think it's really in the ballpark. I think it's just supersonic from the sound of it coming overhead. I think I've got a previous video on my channel, which is 264 mile an hour overhead or something, and that's the 6S one coming overhead, and you can hear from the echoes as it's coming towards you off the trees and the hedgerows that it's supersonic. You can hear just this absolute crack coming off it. Whereas when this one came overhead, it really was just the prop noise. There were no echoes or anything. So there wasn't this. Because normally there's a disc of supersonic sound coming out from the tips. So as it goes past you or as it goes past a hedge, you actually hear that echo before you hear the plane. It's quite bizarre. You hear these zooms. It's going over things whilst the plane's coming in. It's extraordinary. So, but this was quieter. So I haven't got any RPM data, so I can't really tell exactly what RPM it's doing. But it does sound subsonic. So.
And how did you measure the speed? GPS speed?
GPS, yeah, it's all we got, really. I think in a line of sight application, it's not so reliable because if you're turning and going up and down, you may be losing satellite lock, and you're crossing the kind of I guess satellite is a kind of a set of boxes on the ground, isn't it, really, that you're crossing? And if you're not following a straight vector, it's much harder for the GPS to sort of average out the time you're going across those boxes, etc. So in FPV like this, in a straight line, I think GPS is actually pretty accurate as it is in a car. If you've driven along and looked at the speedo, it keeps a pretty stable correlation to the speedo. So I think GPS has got a bad rep in the RC world in terms of planes. The F3S guys don't like it because if you put a data logger in a plane and fly it line of sight doing, you obviously have to keep doing turns to keep it in sight. So you tend to get false readings. I've sort of had ridiculous readings, in the past, trying to measure like that. So, but with FPV, it gives you this advantage where you can just straight line it for a longer distance, and you get a really good clean vector on the GPS then, and it's I think it's pretty accurate. It's I can't cross-reference it with anything unless anybody volunteers to stand in front of it with a radar gun, but I wouldn't. So and I guess timing gates are the other option, but you know, I think it's on the edge of legality, so I don't know any.
You could use Doppler as well, couldn't you?
Want it there, you know, so we're going to have to.
Doppler's been used in the past to get a pretty reasonable estimate of speed.
Yeah, sure. I think on the next couple of flights, we will try and get it right overhead if we can, so for entertainment, if nothing else. But could get a good Doppler recording with that as well. So anyway, Bruce, can I say thanks for your video, mate?
Right. Yep.
That was amazing. Thanks very much to compare.
No worries, mate. And so, do you have a link to the Banggood where we can buy this setup?
Yeah, affiliate links below. Yes.
Yeah. But it's good. I feel immensely proud. It's not, you know, it's not over a great distance or anything like that. But nonetheless, it has got to that speed, and I'm so happy. You know, it's a personal battle. Really, there's nobody I'm up against now, so it's just a personal battle to see how fast this can go. You know.
But isn't your IT expert telling you enough is enough by now?
Yeah. I did promise that I stopped at 300 miles an hour on both planes, on the jet and the electric. You know, if I got to 300 or 500 kilometers an hour each, I'd be happy with that. But you know how it goes. I'm sort of looking at that ESC. Let's say, you know, it could do 17 kilowatts. You know, but so I got some of the bits here. So this is the battery that did set the speed. So it's actually not that big, but there is 14 cells in there. And I'm thinking that the previous 6S batteries I used to use potentially could fit in there with another couple on top to make 14S. So we could. They would produce about, I don't know, 14 kilowatts or something maybe. So for a short time. So I don't know. Maybe there's more, but we'll see.
So do you think Rolls-Royce is just playing catch up this week?
Well, it's kind of annoying actually, because their record was 300 miles an hour up until fairly recently. So when we set the record, I said to the guys, I was like, you know what, I think that's faster than the Rolls-Royce plane. I'm sure they got to 300, and then saw the news reports of Rolls-Royce going 380 or whatever it is. So unfortunately, we didn't beat them. But
so you're playing catch up now.
Yeah.
We've been speculating that they spent more than you though.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah. I wonder if I'll get to see the video. I wonder. That'd be good.
I will almost carry. Well, the PR guys always send stuff to me, so I'll send them Bruce's video, and then they'll twig it. Then they'll twig it. Yeah, they've been very good. They're a very interesting crowd. I'm sure, as Bruce's observation was made, that they're probably aero modelers. I'm sure they are. In fact, I would be 99.9% certain that they would be. Yeah. So how much more? So the propeller's an issue, the power's the issue. Now, so what about the airframe? How much more could you squeak out of the system if you change the airframe?
Quite a lot, probably. I should think. This was only probably designed to go 100 miles an hour, this airframe. It's made by a chap in the Czech Republic, Václav. Amazing guy. He's pretty much single-handedly makes molds for things. He's got a CNC router, and he makes his own molds, polishes them up, makes the planes, sells them. He makes EDFs, he makes the blades, you know, absolutely incredible work. And I think it was only really ever designed for 100 miles an hour, because it's all fiberglass, there's no carbon in it, and it is pretty thin as well. It's a fiberglass sandwich with a layer of Aerex and then fiberglass again. So it's probably 4 mil thick, the skin, 3 or 4 mil thick. So I don't know. It's going to be getting close to that thing letting go soon, I would think.
I wonder what speed it starts fluttering at, eh? Will you find out?
Yeah, but I think because it's quite a short wingspan, it's 780 mil wing, and it's quite a deep section wing, so it has got quite a lot of torsional rigidity. So I don't think the flutter is going to sort of be induced by the wings, really. I think the ailerons, maybe the servos, but I've done it really tight. You know, that's critical. It's the most important thing is the control surfaces, and any tiny amount of movement will start to induce flutter. So getting that tight.
Are they counterbalanced at all? Have you got a CG balancing on those to get the CG ahead of the center of pressure? Because that's what they tend to do in full size to reduce the risk of flutter.
Is it right? No, they're just. I mean, they're skin hinged, so they're just standard composite planes. They're skin hinged. On the Jet, I was worried about the skin kind of deforming. You know, if you pulled up, I was worried about the skin pushing down. So I actually cut the hinges off that and 3D printed a sort of D box to sit in the front of the elevon, and then a socket that went into the wing with sort of carbon hinges to mechanically hinge the elevon and have a sealed gap, and that worked really well. I was worried that was, but it turns out I needn't have been worried. I mean, this has gone faster than the Jet, and it's fine. You know, I went for the cheaper servos than I was going to go for in this because I never thought it was going to go 300 miles an hour. So
those Hobby King 9-gram servos are bloody good, aren't they?
They're still 40, 50 quid each, but the ones in the Jet are 75 quid each. You know, they're the ones that Spencer Lisenby uses in the DS glider. That he set 4 or 5 miles an hour, I think, is his current record, which is, you know, it's mind blowing. If you, it is mind blowing. I mean, flying FPV is one thing, but to stand line of sight and fly something that's going transonic, I'm mind blown. You know, that's in a complete another league to what I'm doing. It really is incredible. You know, that's everybody always compares my videos. Oh, you know, the gliders go faster, and you know,
but they're going downwind half the time at their top speed.
Yeah, but you know, the physics of getting something to turn at that speed, you know, is unbelievable. And not to have flutter on a wing that's over 3 meters, you know, it really takes some knowledge, some tech, and some, you know, you've got to get it right. I think he had there's a really good video actually that he did a tech talk about the challenges he went through with sort of aerodynamic flutter and load reversal and things that he was having trouble with because it was going transonic. So there's a really good educational talk. I don't know how I would link you to that, but if one types in Spencer Lisenby tech talk on DS gliding, you probably get it. And I learned a lot from him actually, because he uses servos in a servo tray with a bearing that goes into the servo horn, and like an extra bearing, so the servo horn's in sort of double shear, as it were, rather than hanging off the gears in the servo. So again, you can reduce any movement in the head of the servo as well as the sort of gear slot, you know. So yeah, it's all learning from each other, you know.
Are you an engineer by trade, Rupert?
Am I what's that?
Engineer?
Not doing this kind of thing. No, I run a business making magnetic sweepers, which my dad started, and I took over probably 10 years ago.
What's a magnetic sweeper?
It's promotion time. It's
that's fine.
Yeah. So I guess if you've got a factory yard and you've got pallets being picked up and put down all day long, you get nails drop out of the pallets. Nails end up in the car park, and cars go over them. Managing director's car goes over it. Nail in the tire, 300 quid. You know, vans in van yards and builders yards and those sorts of things where you've got gravel or uneven ground. You just push a magnet over it, picks all the nails and stuff up, pull a lever, it drops off. Pretty simple product, really. Make them from 300 mil wide up to 20 foot wide. So on my own, my dad did it on his own until he was 70, and I took over and do it on my own. So welding, fabricating, packing, selling, books, all of it really. So it's a small business, just a sort of lifestyle business really. I can't make it any bigger because I don't want to employ people, because that would obviously restrict my freedom for going out on a Friday and flying airplanes, you know. So
you can tell yourself off, can't you? That's it. Only yourself to tell off. You're in trouble on Monday morning. Yeah. Best suit on.
I'm really lucky, incredibly lucky. So
So it's amazing, but it is an amazing set of skills you've had to acquire and learn to get to this point. You haven't magically arrived at this speed. It's not just pulled out of the air, pun intended. So it's a heck of a learning curve.
Isn't that the most fantastic thing about the hobby, though? Isn't that the very point of it? You know, is that I've come from kind of chucking a plane together and it crashing because I haven't done the links properly and I haven't done anything properly, to the fact that I pretty much do everything properly in my life now, and I'm making things because airplanes have taught me to do that. You know, if I didn't do something properly, it went wrong and I lost the project, you know. So steadily, bit by bit, you know, when I'm doing my planes now, generally they'll work first time because I'm so careful about making sure that I'm really happy that everything is as good as it can be in the areas it needs to be, that it's going to be a success. So you know, I was pretty slapdash really. So
even in the days of Spectra 50, you were so far ahead of Charlie
But I still say the Spitfire videos are the best. But anyway, that's just me. If you haven't seen his
Gary, I must tell you what happened to the Spitfire.
Go on then.
So I've built 3 now, I think. Have I built 3? I'm building the 3rd, maybe. Yes. Second one, lost the first one in a river. Second one, I flew into the side of Adele's car at the Model Airfield Club. I wasn't allowed to publish a video because obviously it brought our club into disrepute, but I did an auto launch. It banked right, carrying an awful lot of weight. We had a huge smoke grenade underneath it. We were going for the big one, it was going to be this awesome shot with clouds of smoke coming out the back of it. And what I didn't know was on the previous landing, I'd actually burnt out an aileron servo. So when I went for the auto launch, it rolled right, carried on rolling right, and Adele's car was parked there next to a £50,000 Porsche. So
well done, well caught, Adele's car.
Yeah, thank you. And it hit the passenger window straight in the middle, and just everything gone. Took 2 days to clean the car up. I had to have the whole interior out of it, seats out, everything to get the glass out. So yeah, I'm. So
what was that about working first time, precision engineering and all that?
I'd had 100 really good flights with it, but I don't know when to stop sometimes.
You're using analog FPV. Is that because it's all you had, or is it because of the low latency, or what do you reckon?
I stick with what works, what I'm happy with, and I've got a ground station that's on 1.3. I've got goggles on 1.3, so if I have a problem with the goggles, the ground station's right there. I can flip the goggles off, and I've got a screen to go to. I'm trying to think of some other excuses actually, but I can't really. I don't know. I like it, and I can put the aerials. I can put a single dipole up in the fins. So I've got a 433 in one fin and a 1.3 V antenna in the other fin. So obviously everything's out the windstream then. I don't know, could do it with HD. It wasn't around when I built the plane, so
mind you, 40 milliseconds of latency, that's a lot of ground at 509 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that Spencer mentions in his talk about the DS gliding is the actual human reaction time is a given amount of time. By the time you've seen it, thought about it, input it, and then the latency to the plane is 100 meters at the speed he's going at. So he's really anticipating what he's doing as much as flying it live. He's got to get it right before he gets there. It's
wait till you get to Gary and our age. We measure latency with a calendar, mate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, he's a sundial. Yeah, that's right. For all my time, it's extraordinary work, Rebecca. It's extraordinary. Surely companies must be lining up to sponsor you to do stuff.
Yeah, I haven't had any contact from anybody whatsoever. I said to Adele earlier, actually, it'd be nice if somebody said, hey, do you want to, I don't know, consult on this, or could you come here and fly it, or, something like that. But no, I've not heard anything. So maybe one day. I hope one day.
Abdullah's asking, did we already cover the electronics and the airframe? But perhaps Rupert would kindly just quickly go back over them again.
What do we want to go over? What's in it?
Well, the electronics, yeah.
Let's go. I got it here. So here it is. 740 mil wing. Which one is left or right? 740 mil wingspan, so pretty small. Very, very low frontal area. You can see that from the camera.
Yes.
Yeah, not a great deal going on there. 2 cameras in the front, one micro Swift analog FPV cam, and then there's an HD mini Swift in there, so I've got HD footage from it as well. Going back, so the battery there, 14S. So they're Tatuar line cells, and I used four S's, took one apart and took 2 cells out of it so that I could make 14S. That was pretty scary, I've got to be honest. That's more scary than flying it. 120 sea LiPo apart and desoldering. It is frightening. And my soldering iron's in the house, so yeah, you got to take your time over that one, not in the morning after beer or something.
You get advice from Ian on how to handle that, eh?
Yeah. Billy's not here. He's our man for that sort of thing. He's our electronics expert, or blowing up electronics anyway. Sorry, Rupert.
Yeah. So GPS is just floating about because I stick that on top of the battery because it does seem to be the best place. I've tried it everywhere and it doesn't seem to get as many locks. So I use those connectors, EC5s.
Yeah.
I've had 300 amp. They will desolder at 300 amps, so that's about the limit. There's different sorts. There's one with a like a doily around it, which isn't very good. This one's like a solid copper pin with slots in it, so they conduct much better than the ones with the doily around. There are two types, so one's a higher amp one. Then an APD 200 amp ESC in there. There's not very good light in here, so.
What keeps all the hatches on in flight? I'm not seeing.
Well, so this one is latched, but the latch isn't. Wasn't happy with it, so I put some tape on it as well, sellotape, which stuck down very well. I cleaned the surface first and stuck it down, and it was perfectly well stuck down. And then when I picked the plane up, the tape wasn't there anymore. So.
I'd complain to sellotape about this.
Exactly, some sort of tape thieves. Well, I mean, sellotape could be sponsoring it, couldn't it? Hatches by sellotape.
It won't stick at 300 miles an hour. I know that now. And then it's an in-runner motor, so magnet in the middle, coil around the outside, 84 mil long and 40 mil diameter, rated at 4,500 watts, I think. But like any motor is rated for a duration, isn't it? So they'll take a lot more power. There is a point where they're saturated, so you won't. I'm talking from my understanding here, not my scientific education. So correct me if I'm wrong, but they will reach a saturation point where they just start producing a ton of heat and not really much more power. So there is a limit in that respect, but it's always twice what the rated limit is. I've found so. Or more. The leopard motor that I used originally with 6S was, I don't know how, 4 times over its rating or something, and it was still fine. Actually, that didn't even run as hot as this, so that was quite surprising. The motor bent last time. It was a 5 mil shaft, so I've used an 8 mil shaft motor this time, it looks ridiculous, quite honestly, on a plane this size, having an 8 mil piece of bar sticking out the back of it. But and then it was quite hard to find a propeller collet that would go onto an 8 mil shaft and take a tiny propeller like this, because normally an 8 mil shaft would be on a lot bigger plane, so it would have a longer yoke and stuff. So I had to put something together there and turn bits on the lathe to make it work. And
folding
prop, yeah, it's all that's available really at that sort of double square pitch. It's 7x14, so most off-the-shelf props are never more than squares, i.e. 7.766 or whatever. So
speaking of that over square approach, you drop it from a quad to get it in the air. Is that because you throw like a girl, or because it's got too much pitch on the prop?
Well, I think it's a bit of both, Bruce. You've seen me run in the video. I think, throw like a bit of a girl as well. But I normally like to launch vertically, but the first time I ran this and heard it did not make me want to hold it. So I think the drop drone seemed like a better idea. It feels, when you run it in your hands, it definitely feels like it's got more than 2 kilos of thrust. It really, really pushes on you, even static. So maybe it would definitely torque roll a lot. It really has got an awful lot of torque resistance on the prop. So, but the drop drone's there from the jet, so this fits in just the same, and it's super chilled then, because you put the goggles on, go up with the drone, get used to looking around and feel comfortable, and the picture's good and everyone's happy, and right, drop, and it just it makes it a lot more relaxing. A catapult is going along the ground for the first 3 seconds of the flight. It's a foot off the ground, so there's a lot more chance of something going wrong, I suppose. Which is why I do the vertical launches normally, is because the first thing that happens is it's 100 foot in the air before anything else. So a plane wants to be in the air, really. So the ground.
You're saving a few milliamps for accelerating in your speed runs.
Actually, I thought about that afterwards. Actually, that I must use quite a lot of power on the vertical launches, and must have had a bit more in reserve for having dropped this. So I think there is definitely an advantage there.
How long can you actually fly for?
Not very long. It landed with 40% battery left, and it had done. I can't remember. If you look at the end of the video on the OSD data, it says at the top what the total distance was. I think it was 8 or 9 kilometers. So, and most of that was with the throttle off. The glide ratio is incredible. Once it's got the energy, it just does not slow down. So, hence the 600-meter runway in a full-size airfield. It genuinely feels like you're landing a full-size plane. It comes in so shallow and fast, and then just as the speed, it will just stall, quite suddenly at the end. So,
it's still better than the Rolls Royce. What's the range on that thing? I think it's 15 kilometers or something.
Was it? Was it?
Abysmally small, I think.
Well, you can bring the speed down a bit, get above 15 Ks, and you'll start beating them in all sorts of metrics, cost and distance, and it's amazing. 7x4 14 props, says Abdullah. I'm not sure if you told us the prop size. Oh, you did. So maybe you tell us. Yeah.
7x14. Yeah, I did. I did try a different 7x14 first, and that broke. And then obviously this new one. I have got some other blades. I've got an 8x21, which, if I can go down in RPM at all, would be the blade that I'll use next. Potentially cut that down, so get the advantage of the extra pitch on it. And then I've got an 8.5x23 as well. Again, maybe. And I've got 3 blades of each. So if I don't go down in RPM, I might just put more blades on, which is what some guys do. There's a bit of an efficiency loss there, but you gain thrust volume, at the same speed. So, and I think it looks like that's the limit of it, because the pitch speed of it at full RPM is still way in excess of the speed the plane's going. So it's got surplus pitch speed and is hitting a brick wall. So obviously it hasn't got enough thrust to get over the aerodynamics at that point. So the trade-off would be to get some more thrust area, either with more blades or a longer prop, and keep, and drop the pitch speed a little bit. Maybe now we know sort of how fast it goes, I can dial into that speed a bit better and try and get the pitch speed matched a bit better with the thrust volume. So
it's the electric project costing more than the turbine one, and you've had a bit of bad luck with your turbine, haven't you?
I have, yeah. So the turbine, I had a lot of problems with it cutting out when I was throttling up and starting it. It went on for ages. In the end, it turned out to be a bad receiver that seemed to be sending the odd bad packet to the FADEC for the jet engine, and it was causing it to think I'd pulled the throttle down momentarily, and so it just turned the fuel off for a split second, and that was enough to put the flame out, and it went out. So I probably did 100 starts trying to get over that problem, because I couldn't believe the receiver would be the problem. And then in the end, I just went, I'm going to try another receiver, and it worked. So, but the problem is with jet engines, heat cycling them is it really shortens the lifetime of the combustor and stuff. So I think either something went wrong with that, or the injectors were blocked, because I'd sort of heat cycled it so much. And when I was throttling up fast, it was just flaming out again. So I had to go back to Germany. So packed it in a box, sent it to Germany. The guy in Germany who built the engine said, write €89 on the box, because obviously the new Brexit rules, I'd have to pay tax on the full value of the engine, which is nearly €3,000. So it would have been a big tax bill for him, and then me back the other way. So I put €89 on the box, and then they lost it in the post. So I wouldn't have any insurance or anything, only the value of €89. So
€89.
I was incredibly annoyed and trying to work out, what I could sell to buy another jet engine, and I frankly
kidney. Yeah.
So anyway, in the end, they found it. I gave the guy in Germany the details for it, and he sort of rang around the post offices and tried to find out what was going on, and he got hold of somebody that knew what it was and got the engine sorted out, and it's with him now. So it'd be quite a big bill for servicing it, no matter what's wrong, really. So but yeah, once I get that back, that definitely will go faster. I mean, that was straight and level, and the speed was still going up, and then the flame went out, and that was it, a kilometre away from home with no engine. So
so let me know when you need an afterburner, and I'll sort that out for you.
So hopefully next time that will keep going.
But that airframe's never going to. I mean, obviously you're going to go very, very fast with that. How much? I mean, but which is more fun? That's what I really wanted to ask now. Which is proving to be more fun, the jet or the electric?
I've only flown the jet once. That's how much
okay.
That flight. After the flight, it needed a CG change, which is quite difficult in that, because you haven't just got a battery you can move an inch or something. I had to move fuel pumps and the tiny little batteries. I'd kind of bonded all the cells together, and they were right up in the nose. So it was a real pain in the ass to move the CG. And then I got the CG sorted out and did some engine tests to go for another flight, and then obviously came across this problem with the engine. So I tried everything I could. I took the engine apart. The guy said, in order to unblock the injectors, you need to put it in basically boiling hot kerosene and draw fuel through it backwards. So submerge the engine in kerosene and then draw fuel through the fuel inlet port backwards to hopefully suck anything that was in the injectors out. And I can tell you that boiling kerosene the only place I could do it was in the garage, and putting this £3,000 engine in it and pumping fuel back. I was pretty terrified, and it didn't work anyway. So
I hope we took Adele's car out of the garage before you did that.
The IT department would not be impressed.
No.
Sorry, I missed what jet engine was that? Which one was
it's
it?
a Lambert Calibri T50. So it's I don't think it's advertised on their website anymore. I think he only advertises the T45, which is just only a tiny bit less powerful. But he still makes the T50. So, but it's tiny. It's incredible. I mean, the engine is, it's the size of a Coke can, small, just a bit smaller than the size of a Coke can. It makes 5 kilos of thrust at supersonic speeds. That is a piece of engineering, that thing.
So what's the turbine record speed, or is it because it's FPV record speed that it might be a bit less than other things?
So mine was 312 miles an hour, but the fastest is 440 miles an hour line of sight jet, which is probably 4 times the size of mine, with a 180 Newton jet on it. So an 18, is that 18 kilos of thrust? I think, yeah, a huge amount of thrust. Goes off a catapult. German guy, incredible engineer, built the airframe himself, and the engine's all tucked into it. It's a red one. You may well have seen it on the internet. Fastest Guinness Book of Records jet, RC jet, I think it is. But
build a big enough catapult, you don't need a jet engine.
Yeah. Trebuchet for the win.
I think there's different challenges. Line of sight to FPV, I think you got different challenges really. I think with FPV, it's hiding all the aerials and just making it reliable enough it'll work, and being prepared to do it as well as the other thing. It's quite a leap of faith to sort of do something like FPV.
How did
you have much trouble?
Sorry,
Would you have much trouble remaining compliant with the regulations while doing this?
No, not at all, Bruce. No. As you well know, I'm a strong follower of the rules that are sensible. It's skirting on legality, isn't it? I think it actually wasn't that high. It was a bit far away. It was kind of a kilometre away. So beyond line of sight, but not for very long. It
was within line of sight. You only have to be able to see the area in which it's operating for it to be within your line of sight.
Well, a very good spotter. And the googly, as Adele said, she answered a question on the internet, and some guy said, "How can you see it line of sight?" And she said, "That's what the eyes on the goggles are for."
If you can see it, then that's fine. As soon as it goes beyond visual line of sight, that's when they get a bit uppity, like the CAA. But if your spotter can see it, if it's big enough, your spotter can see it, you're fine.
But that rule's there to deconflict the airspace. So if you see an airplane flying into the area where you're operating, even if you can't see the model, you can still deconflict the airspace. So you're still operating within your visual line of sight. That's the way I'd look at it.
I would love to agree with you, Bruce. However, that's not what our regulation states. I would love to
see, they've got it wrong. I can educate them for you.
I know they're wrong.
But no sort of flight controller on there in the loop. Is it all mandrolic?
No, there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, nearly every crash I see FPV is because of the flight controller. Honestly, the truth, we got loads of guys at the club that FPV, and it's one thing or another. It throws a wobbly, or it doesn't auto launch, and it wasn't in auto launch, or oh my god, the trims have gone, or you've updated it and something's happened. And for this thing, it's just not worth it. It's not going to be in the air long enough to worry about it. The main thing is that it's reliable, that you've got a link to it, you've got control, and you can get it back. So that's my return to home, is that I'd never lose link, hopefully.
There you go, bareback RC and analog FPV. That's the way to fly. I keep telling people.
It's bulletproof. I've done it a lot now, and I've had, the Spitfire crashing potentially was we thought it was a flight controller issue to start with, because it just did its own thing and flew into the car. So, and the other problem with a flight controller would be the very different flight dynamics of it, because it would, in return to home, want to be going at 100 miles an hour, and at 300 miles an hour, I don't know how that would affect the gain of a autopilot, and you'd only find out at 300 miles an hour, when it fluttered. So
I know that there are some being used by British Aerospace in Australia at the moment for some very high-speed trials, and we all know the project and we all know the developer. So I know that some of the stuff that Gaines Speedman worked in, but you would be discovering that.
Yeah, I mean, if you could have,
you're not British Aerospace. Yeah.
Or if you could have dynamic gain, so the gain changed with airspeed or something like that, it would work. But it's more things to go wrong, and you would only find out not working when the thing exploded in the air, and you couldn't really find out why. So
what? Yeah.
For me, whilst I'm skirting legality, I really. It's very hard to be completely safe, but I kind of do my best in terms of making my gear work, and we range test it. We physically range test it. I don't drop it to 20% and walk 10 meters away. We drive away from each other in cars, and one of us stands on a hilltop, and the other one stands down the bottom of a controller 3 kilometers away. So we make sure that I've got a really good link, and then I've got a high power switch from there. So if there's a problem with the link, I can go up into a higher power and get control back again. So and turn around immediately. So. And I got 2 ground stations, and the place where I was flying on the day, it was kind of annoying because the wind direction in terms of sort of which way we were going to go, and RF as well. Obviously, I put a plane up first and do a sort of a fly around the site and see where the RF is best. If I'm getting any problems with glare or anything like that, so I know in advance if I'm going to expect any of that, and our best direction from kind of the lighting point of view, I suppose. And we did have there's a military installation maybe 10 miles away in one direction, which would be the ideal direction to fly in. But the military installation can cause, I've had the odd sort of lockout on the control link. So the other way is definitely better. Can
you say which airfield you're at, or is that a problem?
Yeah, I can say to you guys, it's not, I don't think anything's going to hopefully not come of it. I'm not.
It's on the GPS in the video anyway.
Yeah, I'm not doing this every day. It's one run. I've got to build this thing and then just do one run as safely as I can. I'm not going to start doing it every day. So, and the location we're at, there's 750 kilo single engine airplanes taking off out of there reasonably regularly. So, and they fly directly over the road, single engine failure at that point of takeoff. Probably, you wouldn't make it back to the field, and it's a hill down either side. So they'd be somewhere close to the road if they were going to try and land it. So,
but you've got all that in mind. Have you lost link in that direction? Try and, if I can, or if I can influence in any way, stuff it into those trees or stuff
100%. Yeah, there's a plan at every point really. I fully expect the motor to go out at any point during takeoff. I've always got a plan. So if we drop it and the motor doesn't start, I'm going to head straight down the runway away from us. If when I'm on the out leg the prop comes off, I'm going to turn back and do a downwind landing. If it carries so much momentum, you've got to be prepared to land from either end, really. So, but there's definitely always a plan. I've had so many incidents, I've had props come off and ESCs explode. I also run a separate battery system for the FPV and the servos, each individually, so that should one system go down, it doesn't affect the others. So, in the jet, it's got 3 batteries. It's got one for the motor, the engine, ECU, and starter motor. So, should the starter motor jam or something and take that power system down, the servos and FPV would be unaffected. And the servos and FPV are again on different systems, so that should a servo fail, I'll still have a picture, and you can get a plane on the ground roughly where you want it with a single aileron. So,
yes,
this is great. This is practical risk management. It's not the stuff you get from book learning sitting behind a desk in a CAA office. This is someone who's looking at the risks, managing them effectively and practically, not just putting on a high vis and a clipboard. I wish that the regulators and that the professional operators would learn from this. That we can show them how to fly BVLOS, we can show them how to fly safely, but they're going to tell us through regulation how to do it. And I don't think that's the right way.
Sorry, but I was going to say, you come from a model flying background then, so you learnt at a club, I take it.
With my dad when I was a kid, we went to a club and we did the nitro planes thing in like 1986 or something for a few years. So that kind of got me started, I think, and then obviously didn't do it for a long time. And then the kind of Hobby King era came, where stuff started getting really cheap and people were getting loads of stuff, and it was really fun. It was just great, wasn't it? That time it was a great era. Everything was so cheap, wasn't it? And we just had loads of fun.
That's Robert Flying Wings, yeah.
Bruce did the video on Sparktree. I saw that and then messaged them on YouTube and said, "Hey, I'm not far away from you guys. Can I come down and fly?" What an introduction that was. We had such amazing times there. I can't have ever laughed so much. I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I was going to say, I completely agree with Bruce. I mean, you've risk assessed every part of that. You know what you're doing clearly. If something goes awry, you've thought about every part of it.
Yeah.
And that's the way you know, even flying just a basic model plane, I kind of think, you know, I'm going to take off. This is where I'm flying. If it goes pear-shaped, if I have a problem, this is where I can put it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to have that in mind, because I mean, even I've seen people with, you know, consumer drones. A farmer in a field, a flyer, got a Phantom, and he was really, you know, I went for a chuck about in the field, and he turned it with his Phantom and was just hovering it over our heads. And I said, you know, they can just fall out the sky, like a prop can come off. He goes, no, they can't. And I was like, he's not just going to fall out of the sky. I was like, you know, I've built enough to see magnets come out of motors, and, you know, just desoldering a dry solder joint, a lipo that loses a cell, or, you know, there's so many reasons why it can go wrong, you know, which is, I think, why I'm so happy that this record went well, actually, because of, you know, there's so many things that can go wrong that you've got to think about, from the drone carrying it up. You know, if it crashes with that on it, it's 1,600 quid or something. You know, it's a huge hit. So once it's dropped the plane, then we're down to, you know, can the drone land and the you know, the plane fly away? It could be anything. It could be anything on the drone. You know, it could lose a magnet in one of the motors. It could again have a cell down. It could, a flight controller could go funny, or compass go funny or something. You know, it's just, you've got to do your best, haven't you? I guess, but some of it is you've got to take a risk. You've got to take a risk, haven't you? Sometimes, you know, to progress, it can't all be safe. You know, it is safe, in as such as, before you take off, you've done the basic checks. You know, you've checked your aircraft over, you've checked your battery's got enough charge. You've made it, the risk, as low as reasonably possible and practical before you've taken off. So you've done everything you can. You cannot predict a fate. So the CAA do actually say it is impossible to predict a failure. Say your flight controller just died and your drone falls out the sky. Mm-hmm. That's something you can never predict. But the chance of that happening is so rare now with modern drones like DJI. It's, yeah, he does. He's calculated and he's mitigated all his risks. So he does that, as he's talked about taking off. He's got the plan coming round. And, you know, with the quad taking it up, there is always a risk as soon as an aircraft leaves the ground. Yeah. But you've done everything you can to mitigate those risks. You've made it as low as reasonably possible. You know, you cannot predict a failure. It's impossible. Yeah, I think in an ideal world, we'd have found somewhere that was dead flat for a start, because one of my worries was, should I have a problem further afield, you know, and I have a failure of a tail fin or something like that, where I've got a lot of drag and I can't make it back to the field. We're on top of a hill there, so should it go down the hill, I'd lose line of sight to the plane, so I'd no longer have any control over it. You know, if we were somewhere completely flat, I'd have control right to the ground, so I'd stand a better chance of putting it where I wanted it. So it's not ideal, but I can't find anywhere else I can fly this thing.
Here's the thing: if you set your fail safes up as per what they state, which is kill your throttle. So if you've got a problem, you know, it loses anything and it just cuts the throttle.
Yeah,
you've done what they have said is required legally. You know, you've done everything you can, and again, everything's as low as reasonably practical and possible. You can't. It's impossible to foresee everything. That helicopter's going to come flying over really low one day, and you're going to go, I'm glad I wasn't in the sky.
Yeah.
Never predicted that. Yeah. I've had that happen to me. It's just, you know.
These are experimental aircraft, aren't they, really? And it's any experiment has an element of failure at its heart, doesn't it, really? It's you don't know what's going to happen. It's an experiment. You have a hypothesis, don't you, about what might happen. You know, hopefully it's going to go well, and you've planned all that, and your hypothesis is this is going to happen. But you know, you do get surprises. You know, tail fins.
Oh, yes. I mean, I've flown jets, and I must admit, anyone that flies a jet, I'll tip my hat to, because those things are just subtly bonkers, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I love them. I mean, I have seen one just fall out the sky, and I've seen 12 grand disappear.
Yeah, they seem to crash more than anything else, for sure.
That's because pilot skill isn't, the size of your wallet isn't always matched by your skill level, in my observation.
I would just like to say that most clubs here in the UK will want you to pass your BMFA plane B before they'll let you fly such machines at clubs. Yeah. But typically, from what I've seen, when it's a turbine that goes in, or the plane goes in, it's typically because either the wiring has been run too close to the turbine, it's got hot. I've seen that where it literally, on the remains, we found that the wiring was too close to the exhaust and everything, and it literally melted the wire, shorted the aircraft goes there, and it just boom, you get a fireball like the real thing. It's just fire extinguishers, put it out kind of thing. Yeah, it's when they go, they do go well.
It's usually a sudden lack of talent around here.
Strong gust of gravity. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
The gravity will always get your aircraft back for you.
Yeah.
That's return to home. Yeah, return to home. But so when you do, so the multi-rotor's gone up. You've done the drop. Do you start your speed runs then, or do you wait for your chum to land the multi-rotor?
Well,
do a circuit and running out, or how's it?
That's one of the problems we've got actually. To get a good video, we want the sound of the plane coming past, but this stupid drone is hanging around for so long. It's a DJI flight controller, a Wukong flight controller, and even at full tilt down, it's a real slow descent. We don't want to go into manual mode in case we over kind of pitch it or something. It would be better that it's on the ground safely than trying to get it down too quickly. But yeah, there's another. On the first flight, I did it myself, so I did both. I flew the drone.
That's where I was going with that question. Really.
Yeah. And the plane.
Fish that out.
And the plane, but I did, and I had returned to home on the drone. We weren't as high with the drone, and it was right next to me when I shouldn't have done it really, but.
So what you want to do is get your pilot, whoever's flying the multi-rotor. You don't want vertical descent. Either get them to do really sharp circles coming down. So moving forwards, come down in a circle, get it down quicker, or do a 45-degree descent to get it down quicker. It'll be better than trying to bring the multi-rotor straight down.
Straight down, yeah. So that was the problem I had the first time, was that because I was single operating it, I did it via return to home in the drone. So once I'd done the drop, I pulled return to home, and it went up, came straight back down again. So. But it was right above me, and it was in its prop wash coming down, and so really we couldn't hear anything of the plane. So when the prop came off it, this is ridiculous. When the prop came off it, I couldn't hear that the prop had come off. It was still making such a screaming noise in the air, the drone above us. Then once that landed, I was revving the plane up. I could hear wow, and it sounded like the prop was on it. And I looked at the OSD, and I could see that the height was going up. And then I looked at the speed, and I could see the speed was going up, but I'd actually started diving at that point, so the speed was going up. So I got confused kind of as I was looking between the things going on the OSD, that I thought the prop was still going. I thought we were still gaining speed and height, but it wasn't really making any power. What it actually was the motor shaft completely bent, vibrating the whole airframe and sounding like it had a prop on it. So we could vaguely hear it, but I couldn't distinguish it well enough to and I'd have heard otherwise. I'd have heard the prop come off and the difference in the sound. So this time we were really keen, again from a safety point of view, to get the droners away from us so that I could hear the plane and could I hear anything go on with it. It's another sense, isn't it? So it's another indication that something's wrong. So the pilot, I did say orbit the drone, but I think we had a misunderstanding as to what I meant by that, and I meant kind of last time we came straight down and it took ages, and could you orbit, do a circle and come down with it, but he kind of did, but not quite. We could probably get it down quicker, I think.
And then the speed run itself.
Just disarm. That brings them down real quick.
Yeah, come down real quick. Yeah. do you consider yourself in the middle of the run, as it's coming through?
Yeah.
So you're.
Yeah, that's the ideal position. I want it flat out overhead, and I want that overhead to be somewhere safe in a vector that's heading away from anything dangerous. So I wouldn't have a closing vector with the road or a village or something like that. If I'm approaching full speed, I want that vector to be going away from something. So should it break up, the bits are going to go in a direction other than towards something, And this plane's been 265 before, something 420 kilometers an hour. So up to that point, it's pretty well tested. So, and I kind of just before us crossed that point, and then the 509 was done, a little way away from us. But it's interesting if you watch the video to watch the meters in distance towards home and then away from home, and how quickly the hundreds come off it. It's absolutely crazy when it goes away. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. it's absolutely insane that it's covering 100 meters at that, in that time. So,
and then so that whole speed run, what sort of distance are we talking about end to end for that?
More than a kilometer.
Yeah.
More than a kilometer to get up to speed. Yeah, it's a long way. I can't really make I don't want to stress the airframe too much. So I was at 180, 190 mile an hour on the turn out. It was sort of picking up speed. I didn't even really notice it. I guess what it was the prop beginning to bite more and more. Obviously, with an over square prop, it's fully stalled unless you've got a lot of airspeed. So probably that prop will be stalled up to 100 miles an hour at least. So in the climb, it was probably running quite stalled, and then it started to get grip and it picked up speed without me really realizing it was going faster. And then obviously in the turn I was at sort of 180 mile an hour, which is enough. I don't want to turn any faster than that, really.
Well, that must be a heck of a radius in itself.
Yeah, I don't want to do it tight. I have done it fairly tight with the plane at 360, but at a much lighter weight. This is 400 grams heavier than I normally fly it, so there was another element of unknown.
Tarek's asking what it's made of. So if you could tell us again what the airframe's made of, that would be great. Thanks.
It's made of fiberglass, basically. It's a layer of fiberglass, layer of foam, and then another layer of fiberglass on top of that. So it's a sandwich. So a single layer of fiberglass would be quite springy, and you stick a layer of foam in between it, make a sandwich, and it's the top and bottom skin are in tension. Or tension and compression purely, so not bending load so much. So it's a much stiffer, lighter way of doing it really than just layering fiberglass up and just having a thin, layer of fiberglass. So.
Which manufacturers are going to be, and evening, James, which manufacturers are going to be beating down your doors now? Because there's so many elements to this where different companies could contribute, isn't there? Who do you reckon? Who's on the short list, Bruce? Who's going to be ringing them up?
Well, the problem is it's so esoteric. I don't know. Manufacturers usually want to be able to say, here, have some of our product and show it working really well. But Rupert's application of product is so specific, it might be difficult. You probably get a free DJI system off someone, or maybe a free shark bite system, but I don't know if you want to use those. It is kind of difficult. But this may bring attention in, so that some of the other things you're doing with models, if you're doing anything else, you may be able to attract some sort of support and following there from some of the manufacturers. Oh,
and don't forget, get it the wrong way. Don't forget that's his YouTube channel. Oh, whichever way it is, that's his YouTube channel there as well in your name, Rupert's name. So you must like, subscribe, and do all those other good things that you're supposed to do, and ring that notification bell. That's what they all say, isn't it? Don't forget to ring that bell.
What make is it again? Sorry.
It's a VESA Fusion, so VESA model,
right?
Not CZ Fusion, it is. And they do a couple of versions. He does a EDF version as well, so it's got a kind of molded rear end on it for EDF, which is what the turbine version is, like another version of. What I would like to do, really, if I can talk about that a little bit, is make a plane myself, is design a plane and make a plane that goes really fast, because it just isn't there in the FPV community. We're seeing stuff come out of China with the battery the wrong way around in the front of it. It's the flat noses and square sections, venturis on things, and just ugly aerodynamics. Disappointingly ugly aerodynamics. There is a lot that can be gained there in the hobby community, I think. I don't understand personally why they're so bad. Actually, I think I'd love to work with an FPV company maybe and design a plane. I don't have the CAD skills, so I've worked with a chap called Kevin Gustafsson, who designed the Goblin, which was the thing that that plane.
Yes.
Yeah, great, very, very clever guy, and he designed me an aeroplane. He's got a program where he designs in slices, so he designed me an airplane in slices, and we just couldn't get that to. I couldn't get that to work in Fusion. Fusion 360, which is a CAD program. I couldn't get that slice thing to work in there. We tried laying out the slices and extruding the shape and one thing another and lofting it, and it never looked right. So it probably was a very good design, but I can't translate it into CAD. So I need somebody to help me design a plane. Kevin's a great aerodynamicist, and I'd love to work with him to set that side of it up, and then somebody who could do CAD and turn that into a.
Chris, iForce 2D might be able to help.
Yeah, I was going to say, is Chris here? Chris, are you on the chat? Chris, are you there, Chris? Yeah,
and turn turn that into a CAD model, and from there I can take it. I can get CNC cutting done here and stuff, and make molds, and do all the rest of it, and maybe work with some manufacturers to get parts that are sort of cost, sort of some kind of trade price, so I could kit them out. I think
Rob of Older Flying Wings, don't you? Haven't I seen you on the field with Rob down in
I remember him, yeah, definitely.
Newport Pagnell? Go and kick his door down and give him some grief from me. He's a very clever bloke. He knows his stuff.
Speaking of Chinese, I mean, I wonder if this is the sort of thing Banggood would probably rush at the opportunity to make a model of your model, which wasn't going to do 509 kilometers an hour, but it looked pretty sexy and it would fly reasonably fast. Look how well the Red Jet 400 sold when it was out. I mean, that's a very similar looking model. I think there's a demand out there for a fast model that is faster than average, but not going to break the bank.
I think there's two words that need to be together. Or it's a few words really that need to be together, and it's fast and easy to launch, because normally they don't work together. And so somehow that's like landing them. It gets faster and faster. The heavier they get and the slipperier they get, the faster the landings are. So you can get over that. You just got to find a better and better place to land. But launching is where it's really difficult. There's this borderline where if you don't have much power, it's easy to launch because the wings stay level. If you have a bit more power, it torque rolls, and as you cross a threshold where the weight is going up and the torque roll is going up, you get to this point where you can't get it out of your hand fast enough before it's upside down. And if you haven't got enough power, it'll land, it'll hit the ground before it goes up anyway. So there's this threshold, and beyond that, it's really easy because you can vertical launch. So as soon as you've got enough power to carry the weight of the plane, it'll go up straight. So that's relatively easy. But that bit in between which is probably where this plane would want to be, is quite difficult. So whether the drone would be part of it or not, whether I could do a deal, you don't need the whole drone I've got. If it was specific to one plane, it would literally be 4 arms, a plate, and a release mechanism. It would just, it wouldn't need anything else on it. No legs or necessarily or anything. So I don't know. Maybe that'd be possible.
Just put a retractable undercarriage on it.
Yeah. It's it'd be nice, wouldn't it? It's all about optimizing kind of.
Why no twin motors? I think Tarek's got quite a good question. Yeah, why no twin motors?
I don't know. I've never tried it. There is a F3S speed plane called a Manticore, which somebody's built. If you can type that in, Manticore on YouTube, and F3S with it or something, you might find it. And that's a twin motor, weird looking kind of like the wings sort of come forward and back a little bit, and then it's got a single tail with a V tail on it, and twin motors that are God knows what power each. They're normal F3S plane motors, so it's got 2 of them on it, so you can get twice the power. But at the same time, for me, the most important thing seems to be frontal area over everything else. Is if you can get the frontal area down, it's much more important than what's sticking out or what shape it is or anything like that. Is that overall volume you've got to push through the air. So with a twin, you obviously got 2 motor nacelles and a fuselage, so it'd be very hard to, that would be effectively a lot bigger nose. So I don't know. It would launch a lot easier, wouldn't it? Maybe it's a compromise. I don't know. Maybe
it's all about compromise in the aviation. And Mitchell says way more drag, and that's what we explained there. It's
but you could have contra rotating, couldn't you? And then you could get away from the torque roll and things. But again, available props, is the other problem. It's really, to go fast, there's a very, very small selection of props that will actually go this quickly or anywhere near. It takes really Graupen are the only ones I've found that will hold a good 220, 30 miles an hour, which is where I'd want to be if I was selling a plane like this. It'd want to have to go over 200 out the box, so.
Goodness me. Goodness me. Imagine that. Model clubs all over the land.
The crazy thing is that it doesn't seem that fast now, 200 miles an hour. It's actually.
I know that feeling. I know.
No, but it does. It when I first did it, it seemed incredibly difficult. It was this huge mountain to get over, but actually, it's technically actually not that, in terms of electric power. It's not
200 miles an hour. That's a Western Magnum.
Yeah,
I had one of them.
Did you?
I put one of them over the ground.
Yeah, one of the few planes that will do that with a nitro engine. So
The Western Magnum is a fantastic little monster.
That's that little Delta
Together.
thing with the looks like it.
They-
Dragger. Yeah.
I've got to say something actually. The very first thing that got me wanting to go fast was a video that Bruce did years ago of a pylon racer at the airfield. Do you remember that? A nitro pylon racer. And I remember when I first watched it, because I had quite a quick nitro plane when I was a youngster. And I remember watching your video and just thinking, that's ridiculous. That's sped up. There's no way on earth that's a real plane making that noise. You know, the revs. I was like, this is. And what was that? That was maybe 200 miles an hour, was it?
Yeah, probably hitting on that. It had an Nelson engine in it, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, wow, you know, that's incredible. I want to hear that. I want to see that. You know, how can I do it? And it took a long time to get there. So whoever did that back then as well, I guess it was 10 years ago, was it probably?
Yeah, it would have been a fair while ago.
Yeah, so.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Anyway, I feel a bit like we're talking about me too much. Is there any other?
No. I think it's all we're going to talk about in this one because it's so cool.
We'll look at the options. Look at the rest of the three of us. Who won't talk about us?
Yeah, exactly. No. It's so flipping cool that I'm not going to sully this one with anything else. It is so cool, and to design or to put together something like this takes so much effort and work. It has to be applauded, and the flipping hobby is dying. And it's
I'll talk about the battery a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Charging the battery is one of the problems because obviously with 14S, if I was going to charge each of these packs individually, there'd be a lot of interconnects in between the cells to, I'd have to charge it and then put all the interconnects together, which would be a lot of connections between, the positive and negative terminal essentially. So I had to solder the whole pack together, all the packs. So it is just 58 volts out the end. So to charge them, I have to charge through the balance ports, but I couldn't use a single charger with 4 outputs because there's already a series link in here, and the common earth shared across the charger on the individual balance leads would obviously create a loop, a short across there. So I have to have 4 LiPo batteries stacked around this battery with 4 separate chargers, none of them touching each other, all plugged in through the balance leads to charge it up, and it's the only way to do it.
So are Tatu sponsoring you with batteries for free?
No, actually, I
should be.
I probably should.
Yeah, you should hit them up. Hit them up because this is the biggest test they'll ever have.
Yeah, there's a long list. There's a long list of people, and as James was saying, as the electricity bill being paid over there for Mark, well, send him on some batteries. He needs some. Look, he hasn't got any power over there. So, a prop manufacturer should be all over this. I'm surprised the folding prop. I wouldn't be surprised if you're not losing a K or 2 an hour out of the folding, or am I just making that up?
No, probably not. I mean, a really good solid prop would probably be better. There's the yoke of this prop sticks out slightly from the airplane, so there's a disc of kind of drag there that's not doing anything. One of the problems is when you land it, obviously with a carbon prop, if it clips the ground, you're going to snap fibers, and the next time it's not going to be as strong. So would you have to change the prop every flight to be happy that it's not going to come off and destroy the plane, right over your heads when you first start the motor, or when it's coming overhead at 300 miles an hour? So I don't know. It seems awfully kind of hokey having a prop blade spinning on a 3mm kind of bolt, but that's all that's available. That's the only way to do it.
It strikes me like our friends at Cranfield University, or perhaps even British Aerospace themselves, should be taking your machine and putting it in one of their wind tunnels and driving some wind past it and
see what can be done.
See what could be done, and if you had a sacrificial one, to destruction, so that you had an idea.
I think the guys in the hobby world are every bit as good as the guys in the commercial world. So I think these guys building props in their sheds and who do the F3S planes and do these informal competitions between each other, I would say that they're probably at the pinnacle of science, actually. Because they've got no restrictions, they've got no inhibitions, no boss above them telling them this is the way we're going or this is what we're going to do. They're free to do what they want, and I think I think they probably are at the sort of pinnacle of science, really.
And most of all, they don't know that some things are impossible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I never thought you'd fit 9 kilowatts in a plane this size, but you know,
Oh,
it's possible. It doesn't explode it, you know.
And they basically they sit there, and then they've got the problem is with these companies. They'll sit there, they'll design something, and then they go, "Who can test this for us?" Because they won't have that. They'll miss that part of the skill out where the aero modeler, you know, you can build it, you'll draw it out, you design it, put it together, build it nicely, and then you're going to take it out and fly it. Where, you know, these designers, they're going to go, we need someone now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just typing it. Sorry.
There's a lot of trial and error in it. So I'd say most of this comes off the back of having done it before, not from maths, actually. I kind of do a bit of maths in terms of what I kind of roughly expect the prop tip speed to be, and kind of ballpark the motor KV and the battery and what the battery sag will be and all that sort of stuff. I do maths in that respect, but it's not all based on maths. It's actually mostly based on the fact that I had this many RPM and that much pitch last time, and this happened. And, you know, having done so many iterations of trying to go fast, I can pretty much just go, I'm going to put this motor with that prop and that battery, and it'll be, you know, it'll be pretty close. So, experience really helps. I didn't know what I know now back at the beginning, which is why I was going 170 miles an hour, and now that just seems like a walk in the park. You know, it's if you've got the knowledge, which is why it's so important to share the knowledge, and how I've got here is through other people's knowledge. Bruce, right from the start, talking about video frequencies and how radio works and how it propagates off antennas, and, you know, so much stuff I learned off Bruce in the early days, and I still do, Bruce. You know, it's constant education. Your electronics and antenna trackers and things you're making. You know, I watched all those videos and tried a lot of the things that you did, and, you know, and the guys
you're still here. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But
It's that other Bruce.
I would hate for this to be stifled, you know, and I feel like it has been stifled a bit in the last few years with the regulations. A lot of the forums I used to go on where people, every day there was new stuff, people coming up with new stuff and clever ideas, and, you know, I've done this, and the work that was going into the stuff was incredible. And then these regulations came out, and just forums died. You know, people stopped doing it because all of a sudden they were being watched, and the public knew that, you know, oh, what are you doing? You know, you're flying a drone, and it, you know, they suddenly knew what was going on. Whereas before, they'd come over and look in the goggles and go, oh, wow, that's amazing. Look at them, they're incredible. You know, it's just times have changed, haven't they? You know, I'd hate.
It's funny you said the Hobby King years. It is a bit weird, isn't it? It's definitely.
Yeah.
There was that time.
There was that time.
Groups, Hobby King, and
yeah. Everybody had a go. It's like, shit, I'll get a Bixler. They're 30 quid, you know, or something at the time, and cheap old orange radio, and you get a couple of 2200 3 cells. You know the story, and it was you know, great. And a lot of people learned a lot of stuff. You know, I've learned a lot of skills doing this off people. You know, I regularly talk to people who are doctors, who are janitors, do you know what I mean? Who are car mechanics, who are electronics engineers, or CAD designers, and all sorts of people are into this, aren't they? That have got jobs doing other things, and so they all bring their individual skills into this programming, and, you know, which I'm crap at. You know, I can't do any of that, but you can pick the knowledge out of all of it and really learn an awful lot outside of school. It's not a formal education. I don't pay for it. It's just this enthusiasm that everybody's got that really, you know, drives the learning forward, doesn't it? And we've always, hobbyists have always led the way, haven't they? Yeah. We had multi-rotors. We were developing them long before you were seeing the military really using them and stuff, you know. And then, you know, weren't a lot of the military things written out of sort of Arduino code and things like that? And
still are.
You know, and they basically got Hobby King Bixlers, or what was that plane at the time?
The Raven. The Raven.
Wing on the top, fuselage hanging out underneath, and a sort of
Skywalker.
Skywalkers. I don't know whether the Skywalker was a copy of the military things. They were hundreds of thousands of pounds, those things, you know, and we could do that in a week with 100 quid.
For many reasons, Patrick and I have been laughed at meetings, but we were laughed at heavily by some military guys in 2008 when we said that there will be GPS guided complete systems, very capable, sub $1,000. They said no way. And so when you started getting to 500, which you can now,
didn't it happen quickly? Didn't that kind of gestation of tricopters with servos in and stuff hit Mavic so quickly, didn't it? And when you see a Mavic, it's mind blowing what the thing can do. It's an alien spaceship, like, it can follow you, it can face recognize, it can stabilize in a wind. It's astonishing it happens so quickly, isn't it? Really. And how lucky were we to be part of that story?
In the good old days, back in the good old days.
Yeah, the good old days is less than a decade these days, isn't it?
It is. Well, I haven't worked out the formula for it yet, but there has to be a number. Like you have Moore's law for the improvement of electronics. There has to be another. We'll call it. I don't know what we'll call it, but for when things get reinvented by big business, things we've all seen and we all know about, but it will be invented soon,
like a hyperloop.
But isn't it great? Isn't it great when we see the advertising blurb and know the utter bullshit that it is? Because we know what's possible. We've done it. We know how long they'll fly for, how far they'll fly. What is, and you can just spot the bullshit a mile away, can't you? Which is great. But it is,
but that must happen. Well, Bruce is a really good example of hyperloop, but it must happen across industries. So there'll be people in automotive, people in whatever they're in that will go, yeah, that's exactly how it works in the car world. Yeah. And then the big companies almost claim ownership or the patent grabbing of this and that and all the other. How insidious that is. That's also ruining it for us. And I think a lot of the regulations are because big military vendors want to shut it down quick so that they can be the only people making the money. But it's a bit late because this was all born in the YouTube era, or a lot of it was born. So
the evidence is there, isn't it?
Prior art is very well out there, but that doesn't seem to count for much these days. Rat race, that's a good one. The CIA weren't there because they were too busy checking the eluder thoroughly. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. That is. I don't know if you caught that one, Rupert, the airspeeder, and how terribly put together that was.
What was that?
It was a thing that flew away. It was to be the manned racing thing that flew away at Goodwood. And
went really high, didn't it?
It was terrible. That was terrible.
Did you see recently they've just put out a press release how they're improving the flight testing of their airspeeder? It's now got 5G. Like that makes any difference at all?
It's probably just.
It's done. It's got 5G. It's done.
That was the impact stress.
It's got 5G walking all over the control link. Great.
You're right. And Max said this is why the hobby can't die. With my primary school teacher head on, though, it's very hard to actually we fly indoors in the sports hall. That's okay, but to go outside now with RC and stuff and liability and potential regulation and this and that and the other, it's just let's make rovers. It's easier.
The worst thing is for clubs, so trying to keep the hobby alive. So, I'm at 2 clubs, and one of the clubs, we always say the club will last as long as its youngest member. And right now, that's probably me, as one of the youngest 3. That's scary. Clubs, we need young people to come into it. But what you find is kids can't come to the club because the parents have to take time out of their day. So if they want to come and learn to fly on a Saturday and then come every Saturday, you've got to have a parent there because can't be left alone with other adults and all that. And then you get the problem happens. They'll get to like 18, 19, if they stay with it long enough. They go to university. The hobby dies there for them because now they're at uni. They've got other interests.
I think you mean just they find girls and beer. That's what you're trying.
That's what I was going with.
Yeah.
So they find better things to do, and expensive to do, and then they'll come back to the hobby maybe if they're lucky in their 40s, but generally it tends to be people coming back to the hobby in their 60s and 70s, which is what I tend to find. I did it when I was a kid, and I used to be able to fly. Well, come on then, we'll get you up on the trainer, we'll see how you do. And it's one of those things. The hobby is to a degree to get younger people flying.
Can I ask a question? How welcoming to FPV are both the clubs you're at in terms of planes and quadcopter FPV? Are they a very FPV friendly club? Because my experience at our own club is certainly that the younger members are all into that to start with. they get into the planes as a result of seeing other people's planes and EDFs and, oh, isn't that nice Spitfire? I want one of those kind of thing. But they, you know, a lot of them are coming. We have got some young guys, you know, and a lot of them are coming from the FPV first, you know.
Yeah. So I've tried to get FPV kind of like racing, little, you know, racing evenings and stuff like that. Because on a Saturday and Sunday, and you know, the club used to be rammed with 20, 30 people. 6 years ago, you couldn't swing a cat at the club. 8 years ago, you know, on a Sunday there would be like 30 people there flying. You know, and the club can't handle much more than that. A membership of over 100, but you'd only get like 20, 30 show up on a Sunday. There wouldn't be enough room for the racing quads, if you like, at that time. But now, you know, in the evenings, we used to go like specialist evenings, specialist days, try and get people in, helicopters, quads, FPV, a club that says no to a particular type of flying. It can be quite hard at times. So our club didn't allow control line, for example. There was a few members that didn't like that.
Quite right.
Control line, A, takes up a lot of space. B, the noise levels are horrendous, or used to be. You know what I mean? I know electric, it's changed now, but we don't allow jets either. So one club I know didn't allow jets at all. But another club that I flew at, where it was a very small group of us, you couldn't fly an internal combustion engine at all. You could fly electric or you could fly a jet, but you couldn't fly an internal combustion engine because the locals were used to the jets of RAF Coningsby. So if they hear a jet, to them, that's normal background noise. If they hear this horrible two-stroke revving, they hated that. That was like, no, not having that. Oh, you're flying a jet and it sounds like them. That's fine by us, kind of thing. It's really weird how, you know, it kind of, clubs go through cycles anyway. So, it's interesting. Trying to get people in to come to clubs is very hard.
I think one of the things people are hit with, and certainly the reputation of clubs, is that, you know, right, you've got to get your BMFA thing. You've got to do this. You've got to learn these rules. You can't fly here. You can't fly there. You can't fly nitro. You can't fly control line. You can't fly gliders on a Sunday. You're only allowed here between 9 and 6, and you just go, I'm going to go and fly in a field.
So you know, we try to keep it as clean as we can at any club I fly at, because I always say, you know, I've been on committees and stuff, want it to be as clean as we can. So typically engines, planning permission, if you've got a club and you've got planning permission, the problem is when you apply for that planning permission, locals can come and object. So you end up with these kind of time restraints. So you can't fly before 10 a.m. glow, and you've got to finish at like 8 p.m. glow. Now, electric can fly any other time, kind of thing, is what we managed to get in. I
don't think I'm blaming this on model clubs per se. It is by the nature of the fact that there are so many people that complain about anything fun these days that, you know, that we have to have these restrictions. But when you add that to now, you've got to register and put your name on this database, and you've got to pay just to put a plane in the air. You've got to write these numbers, and if you haven't, you're liable for this, and the police can come around your house, and you just think, I just want to fly a toy plane. You know, this isn't a fun pursuit anymore. You know, and it really affected me actually. It nearly pushed me out of it. I got so annoyed with it. I've had to get to the back of my mind that it is what it is, and moving forward, we're in the world we're in. You know, it's
interestingly enough, who I used to work with at a training company, they used to be a big model flyer. They were a BMFA examiner. When the CA they changed the rules and started charging. They went, I've had enough of this. I can't, you know, don't get me wrong, they're getting on, they've retired and this, that, and the other. And they're like, this isn't too much BS. I've had enough of this. And they just literally walked away from the hobby, which is really sad because they're a skilled flyer, really helpful in the hobby. Yeah. Knowledge is
100 years. There's been 100 years of this hobby being safer than cycling or shooting or fishing, probably. You know, I wonder how many people fall in the river a year and die from fishing. You know, I mean, it's ludicrous. The risk, as Bruce always points out, you've got to base it on the risk. And where is the risk? Where are all these accidents and people dying? And you know,
so
just there's horrific.
They're not there, are they?
In the UK,
there was horrific. Go on, Mark. Sorry.
Well, in 137 plus years now, because it's well over. I think in the UK, people actually, sadly, have died from model flying, but I think the number's only like it's single numbers. It's not hit the doubles at all.
Relative to the hours of fun, I mean, it's
it's the
nothing.
safest thing you
It's
can
nothing
do.
compared to anything, skateboarding or anything, is it? Really, it's as safe as anything else.
It's
the really
safer.
good thing about it. As Bruce says again, it's not about safety, is it? It's about
It's
money. It's about money, isn't it? That's long game. That's what it's about, isn't it? You know,
if people could survive when Charlie was flying, they can survive any time. Charlie was the biggest ultimate threat to all the bystanders, and no one got killed much.
I'm afraid I've come to the conclusion that, it's like the A2CFC. They've come up with this new A2CFC. Yeah, that's not about safety. These C markings are not about safety.
It's about liability. It's about liability. It's about being able to pin the liability on somebody, isn't it? Really, that's when something happens.
It is.
You know this. You know the rules. You've signed this. You've done that. You throw the book at you, kind of thing, isn't it? You can't claim you didn't know what was going on. You know.
Yeah, it's about
everyone's clamoring to be a victim, so we need to be able to blame people if that's going to be the case. It's the era of the victim.
Yeah, and the thing about the airspace being somebody like Amazon, for example, owning the control system for the airspace, it's
coming.
So logical.
It's coming.
It's so logical. It just makes up. You go, oh God, yeah. When you said that, I was like, of course. Isn't that the perfect thing? And then you pay to fly, don't you? Somebody has got. You can't fly without this. That's the whole modern world, isn't it? You can't get a job without a mobile phone, can you? So you've got to have a mobile phone, and you can't do this without that. And there's all these gates, isn't there? That are engineered around people that you can't get out of. And that's what this is about. Is if you want to fly a plane, you have to comply with our system. And by the way, that costs.
Well, there's a terrible accident to report in the UK. AAIB, I think it was a Cessna 150 Aerobat going to a very small airfield into the Lake District with no. It didn't ring ahead and ask what the conditions were, like you're supposed to do, and all these other good things. And there's a moment, Bruce. What's that about? And so anyway, so he goes
in the window.
So he goes into this airfield without permission. The bloke that owns it's pretty annoyed with him because it's been raining and it's boggy. He tells him, "Oh, look, well, you can't fly out of here with your passenger. You'll never get out of here with your passenger. Your passenger go fly with your mate in the morn, the normal stole plane. You need to go all the way back to the threshold and every other foot you can. Turn around and go." Does he do that? No, he wobbles down, goes halfway, stalls in, dead. Game over. But it's just so. Where was I going with that long-winded story? Was that it's just so bloody unsafe. It's so bloody unsafe, and he ignored all manner of rules, all manner of advice, and yet we're more dangerous.
And we're told manned aviation is safer because they've got skin in the game. They won't take the risks. This is what we're repeatedly told. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's boils my blood.
I went in a light airplane for a birthday present. Got a flying lesson, and it was an old Cessna 172, and it is quite hilarious being in something that old, isn't it? And flying, it's the oldest thing I've ever been. I've never been in a my mate's old Banger doesn't look as old as that. It was terrible, and the safety doesn't exist, does it? We're flying around and another plane just appears from underneath us and in front of us. And I said, "Did you see that?" And the pilot said, "No, I didn't. I missed that one." And later on, it wasn't particularly close. It was quarter of a mile, half a mile, or something like that. But neither of us saw it. And I said to the pilot, "I was like, why the hell haven't you guys got an iPad just with your locations on? Like everybody has an iPad. There's an app. The iPad's got GPS. It might not work 100% of the time, but holy shit, it's got to be better than none of the time." And he told me that no, you can't have a piece of uncertified equipment in the plane. And I was like, but. Yeah. Better than having nothing at all. You've got the tech's been there for years now, and you guys are still flying around blind. I was like, this is ridiculous. And then he pulls this lever from under the dashboard, keeps pulling it as we're going through the flight. As aviators, will probably know what I'm talking about. It was a carb heater, a carb de-icer. Pulling this thing. And I said, "What happens if you forget to pull that?" And he says, "Well, the carb will ice up and the engine will cut out."
Yeah. Visible moisture, all that sort of thing.
A mechanical valve on the thing that every 10 minutes opens the valve. I mean, as if the pilot hasn't got enough to do, looking around at planes, you've got to manually pull this lever every 10 minutes. believe it. I was just astonished that of all we've been told of how dangerous this is. I was like, this is absurd. I'm not going to start taking lessons or anything if that's the way this game's played, because it's madness. It's straight up madness from 9 to 30.
The situational awareness thing always gets me. You jump on 172. You've got such a limited field of view where you can see anything, as you pointed out. Yet they're telling us we must always have a spotter for FPV because of lack of situational awareness. But when you're in that aircraft, you couldn't hear anything coming. You can't see bugger all, and that's why we have so many mid-air collisions between manned aircraft.
If you're on your own, you haven't got a spotter, have you? You're concentrating on what you're doing, flying and pulling the carb de-icer. You're not looking around for. And how much does an iPad cost? 300 quid. Got GPS on it. Have an app. Everybody shares it.
I still haven't got it, Rupert. I still haven't got it, but I almost have to. Instead, I'm going to call it the whip antenna of common sense. Would be the red card of common sense. We don't allow common sense in this.
Okay,
and that's common sense. You can't be going with common sense. It doesn't work.
I mean, it is.
You're right.
It is absolutely bonkers, though, as you said. So you're in your Cessna. You can't see anything.
There's a RID device. Sorry, Mark. That's
electronic
GPS, and that'll work for gliders, open glider network.
Is it mandatory?
No, it's not mandatory. No. The interesting thing is the gliding world, because they've created a fantastic network of these, and there's receivers on the ground, so you can even get the data pipe back up to your iPad, or you can see it live. It's got Wi-Fi on it.
Well, that essentially does what I'm talking about, does it? Then?
Yeah, it does exactly what you're talking about. If I was flying the glider, I'd put that on. But it's about $40 tops.
Why haven't you got them? What? It's such an easy thing to do. It's not
microlights, gliders, balloons.
Everything should have that kind of device, electronic efficacy, right? However, because we don't have skin in the game and we are the most dangerous thing in the air, we're the ones, especially in America, that are going to get forced on remote ID, which no other aircraft can see anyway, because it's got nothing to do with transmitting like that device does that Gary has just shown us for the open glider network. It's absolutely, RID is a pointless system. But that kind of system that Gary's just talked about, that little open glider module, that would make sense. But the problem is, that little fella there, the problem is no company can then make money out of us. Because if we were told to all put those on our drones or be that compatible, no multinational could make lots of money out of us by selling us RID devices. Do you know what I mean? There's money made in this market, and they're going to make it somehow. And it's going to be.
We're an untapped market, aren't we? We're these people that use something, this resource. We use the air, don't we? And there's quite a few of us, so we're an untapped market.
Way more of us than manned. Way more.
Yeah, I bet there's more people flying models of a weekend than there is people flying recreation.
By an order of at least 10. I don't know what number you put on it, Bruce.
What kind of cash cow are we? We're just there to be milked, aren't we now? Really,
especially when RID comes in.
Is it going to?
Yeah.
Is it?
Which coming, we just don't know when. I've got a freedom of information requesting on that for the UK. I want to know, and I want to know what companies have been doing it.
Well, I'm right by saying everyone needs to know where everyone is. It's true. You would end up needing some sort of filtering on when Bruce is making his ADSB alarm, which is another way of doing it, but it's the old-fashioned way. This is much more modern, new electronics.
But it has no place in aviation. Modern equipment.
No.
I was having a debate. Well, we weren't having a debate. We were doing a bit of problem solving. They asked me a question. And one of their questions was about remote ID. But, we going along talking about it. And I was like, look, do I care about anything under, where's your little ticker? You're going to need your ticker for this, Gary. Do we care about manned aviation below a certain height? This is one of the things. So do we actually care about general aviation below 2K, for example? No, I don't care about that if I'm flying my drone. Do I actually care if it's at 1,500 feet, 1,500? Well, no, I don't care. I'm at 400 feet. The only things I ever care about is anything that's under 1,000 feet. And even then, if it's at 600 feet, do I really care? Is 200 feet enough separation?
You care about its trajectory. I mean, if it's Rupert, then you care because he could be at 1,000 feet and 2 miles away, but he'll be on top of you before you know it. So you care about his trajectory more than his actually where he is right now. And did we have the conversation off air last week with Richard or on air? I can't remember. He was talking about how they very much filter their stuff at Altitude Angel based on that. But all of that depends on having modern equipment and modern ways of displaying the tracks so that you can filter them accordingly. Ain't going to happen with ADSB.
I had an idea. I've got an idea. I forgot to email Richard. That's reminded me. I've got to email him. I've had an idea.
But sadly, I think RID is coming. America's pushing like Billy O for RID, and it is the 5G telecom providers and people like that are behind it. It's not safety.
I can tell you something. I wouldn't be adding any extra RF on a plane that goes at that speed. I wouldn't be putting anything in that would stand any chance of reducing its safety, which it frankly would do. You know.
Yep. That's been my claim. Why do you want a transmitter that's operating on the same frequency as most people's control links, right next to the sensitive receiver? But as we say, it's not about safety. It's not even about maintaining safety. It's all about clipping the ticket every time you take off.
Anything that doesn't need to be on board is something that could potentially bring the plane down, isn't it? You know, anything that doesn't shouldn't be there.
And the only thing you should add to an aircraft is lightness. It's
I wouldn't personally. I would have to either stop or do, you know.
Yeah,
and that'd be a shame. But you know, it's putting devices. I mean, I did say this. I did when I heard RID was coming. I said to the CA, so I've got an EB. You want me to put RID on it? How does that device on a this is pre-made aircraft? How do you put RID on this and not upset its center of gravity? How are you going to make me put RID on device on and it's one of those questions. Are they going to tell me where to put it on an aircraft? Well,
they'll tell you where to put it, all right.
And already the sun's already not shining there. Look, so
how big is this thing going to be, though? I mean, how big are we talking with something that's going to?
We don't know. And anything that uses telecoms is flawed from the outset, especially in America, because there's masses of places in America where you won't get a signal anyway. So what's the point in it?
The first run of it was actually to prohibit flight if it didn't make its network connection, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we'd have got the crew there for the flight at the weekend, ready to set our record after months of work, and couldn't get signal.
And then you're not flying. Yeah, then
perfect day for months, and then what do we do?
Don't fly. You don't fly on it.
It doesn't make it any safer, does it? It doesn't make it any safer. We had a flying event where we were launching. We got some rocket guy to come and he was going to launch some like proper rockets for us, the ones you need a license for. We were going to kind of fly around with planes and we see if we could see the rockets and stuff. See if we could get a clean shot, as it were. And we phoned a friend of mine actually ran the event, and he phoned the local airfield and got a NOTAM set up and said, "Listen, we're going to be doing this between this time, between these altitudes, nautical mile radius. Can you stick a NOTAM up? Because, potentially." It was literally like a calling card. They were coming all day over 1,000 feet. What the hell is going on? It's like he said there's twice as many planes here as the normal. Like, what on earth's going on? It was a calling card. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's like in Wales when the farmer put piss off Biggles on top of the barn, and then every briefing, have you seen that barn? No, I haven't seen that barn. If you go up there's a barn that says piss off Biggles. Everyone went, look, there's and it even got to the point, the big Hercules simulator used to be a camera going over a model of their scenery. And it was even put on the Hercules. Someone painted it on the roof of the barn, on the little model on the Hercules. So, piss off Biggles. So that didn't work well. Yeah, no, yeah. Patrick tells stories. There was the big in America. There was a big counter UAS thing, and they put big NOTAMs on that, and they had to keep stopping the event because of the light aircraft and helicopters flying. And that was an FAA event, and they were all stood there, and they had to keep stopping it because people kept encroaching the airspace.
So a NOTAM is just to tell people something's going on. But you would think that if the FAA were there, they'd be going, I'm going to check this guy's flight logs and see if he's read his NOTAMs. You'd think they would be writing down these aircraft numbers.
I think they did.
Yeah, but if it's not in a temporary exclusion zone, they can still fly through there. It's just notifying them that this is happening.
Yeah.
No,
For
it's terrible.
safety reasons, though, that's not for any other reason.
Safety is one of our top 10 priorities.
Yeah. That's why we phoned them. We were doing the right
Number
thing.
11.
General Aviation came back with doing the opposite to what we suggested they should do from a safety point of view. So,
yeah,
I don't know. It's all run by the money these days, isn't it? And nothing seems to make any sense, does it?
So when are you coming to New Zealand, Rupert?
Hey?
When are you coming to New Zealand?
Oh, Bruce, I'd love to. My sister lives in Auckland, so I've been twice.
She's down the road.
If I knew you probably 2 or 3 years before I did, I would have come and seen you because I went there.
But you'll be back.
I will.
Yeah,
But I've got a bit of a dicky immune system, and going on long plane journeys is a bit of a challenge.
Well, bring it with you. Bring your immune system with you. We don't mind.
Yeah.
Richard Immune, Dicky Immune System.
Bruce, have you flown to the UK?
Yep.
You've been to the UK, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was on Scrap Heap Challenge, man.
Oh, you were.
Yeah, he was. He was a judge. Yeah.
No, I was an expert.
Oh yeah, that's right. You were the expert, weren't you? Yes, that's it. Yes.
Drip under pressure.
It's a long way.
So.
It's a long way.
It's a 23, 24-hour flight.
Yeah,
with usually
it's
one or
as
two
much as the
stopovers.
human body can take. I think, to be quite honest,
But just go first class.
Couldn't have taken another hour of that. You know what I mean? That
We
was.
just go first class and spend the entire flight in the spa pool.
Yeah.
Does that still happen in airliners today? But look, we have started talking nonsense. That is the clue.
Yeah,
I don't want to talk about
We
other
never
things in this because we never stop talking nonsense. You're right. Rupert, Amazeballs, thank you very much for short notice, spending so much time with us and telling us all about your fantastic flight and the work that goes into it. It's truly monster impressive, very impressive. Spitfire's still the best, but monster impressed. You have to watch the Spitfire videos. I love them. They absolutely sum up this whole sort of thing for me. But this flight is amazing. So thank you very much. Bruce, Mark, thank you as well. Dear viewers, wherever you are in the world, be safe, wear a mask, wash your hands, do all those are good things. And we'll see you again at 2100 GMT next week. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.